There we go. Mortgages, chapter 13. First of 3 chapters on lending. So in this chapter, we're going to describe the provisions of a note, a mortgage, a trust deed. We're going to explain various methods of satisfying or transferring a mortgage, including the process of foreclosure. So let's start off here. A note and a mortgage. There are 2 parts to a mortgage. The mortgage itself, which is the promise to pay, and a note, which is the financing instrument. It lays out all the terms of borrowing. So the mortgage is a pledge for the property. It's a pledge of property that serves as collateral for the loan you're asking for. All right. There are 2 parts to the mortgage. The mortgage itself, which is the promise to pay. You're pledging to pay back the loan according to the terms that are written in the note. And if you fail to do that, the lender, you're putting up the property as collateral for the loan. But the promise to pay says that if you fail to continue making your payments according to the terms in the note, the lender can foreclose on you to get that collateral, that property that was pledged as collateral for the loan, sell it at auction, and use the proceeds to pay off the debt. That's why the mortgage is the promise to pay. Banks don't make promises, they make loans. So who is giving the promise? The mortgagor. And who is the mortgagor? The borrower. The mortgagor is the borrower. They're the one that's giving the promise to pay to the bank. So therefore, the bank, the lender, is the mortgagee. The note is your financing instrument. It lays out all the terms of the borrowing, how much you borrowed, what the interest rate was, the terms of payback. How many biweekly payments, 1 payment a month. How does it work? The interest rate, the length of the term. Is it 30-year mortgage, 20-year, 15-year? It lays out all the terms of the financing. And it is the note that makes the borrower personally liable for the full amount they borrowed. So in the event that if they sell your property at auction and there's not enough proceeds to pay off the entire debt, then the note will hold you personally liable for repaying that balance. Okay, so 2 parts of a mortgage and a note. The note is the financing instrument, and the mortgage is the promise to pay. Okay, who is the mortgagor?
The borrower.
There you go. So the note is the financing instrument, lays out all the terms of your transaction. The mortgage is just your promise to pay, where you're pledging that property as collateral that you're buying with that loan. If you fail to make the payments, they can foreclose, sell the property at auction, use the proceeds to pay off the debt. Proceeds are, if they're not enough, well, the note makes you personally liable for the balance and paying it back. Okay, so let's do some highlights. You guys know what I'm waiting for, right? Not going to keep saying it.
Got it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Everybody got it?
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay. So the mortgagor is the borrower. They're the owner of the property that took out the loan, that pledged the property as collateral for the loan. The mortgagee is the lender. They're the one that's taking your promise. Hypothecation sounds like an upper crusty word of the rich, right? Hypothecation. Well, hypothecation is pledging a property as security for a loan without surrendering possession of that property. A mortgage loan is an example of hypothecation. You're pledging your real estate as collateral for the loan, but you're not giving up that collateral like with pawn shops. You're actually living in it. So a mortgage would be an example of hypothecation. The borrower's not giving up the collateral for the collateralized property. They're just pledging it as security for the loan. And if the borrower doesn't pay them back, then the lender would have to come and get it. They would do this by the legal process known as foreclosure. And this is the opposite of the way a pawn shop works, where if you need money, you bring in one of your valuable goods and they estimate its value and they lend you a portion of it. And they hold on to that good, whatever that product is, until you come back and pay back the loan, and you have a deadline to do it. And if you don't, then they keep the item, sell it, and they keep the profits. That's how they make money. So real estate does not work like that. You're not giving up the property. You're just pledging it as security for the loan. They have to come get it. All right. That's how hypothecation works. So trust deeds or deeds of trust. New Jersey's a judicial foreclosure state, meaning that foreclosure needs to go through the court system. So we don't use trust deeds, which is a neutral third party that will hold on to the deed. And if you start to default, well, they give the deed to the lender. And so the foreclosure process is a lot smoother and quicker and cheaper because it does not go through the court system. It goes through a neutral third party that holds on to it, verifies whether you've been making your payments or not, or if you're in default. If you're in default of your terms of the loan, well, then they give over that ownership, the deed, to the lender. So the trustee is a neutral third party that holds on to that deed, and they can give it back to the lender without going through the court system. So, like I said, the foreclosure is a lot smoother process. We don't use trust deeds here in New Jersey because we are a judicial foreclosure state. So, provisions of the note. The note is the same thing as a bond. States that use trust deeds and bonds. New Jersey does not use bonds. We use notes. It is the financing instrument, and so is the bond. So it's executed, that means signed, by the borrower at closing. It states the amount of debt borrowed, the time and method of repayment, the term, the rate of interest, the monthly payment amount. It's signed by all parties who have an interest in the property. And it's what makes the borrower personally liable for the entire debt, even in the event of foreclosure. So the provisions of the mortgage document. It's executed by the owner and the borrower, who is the borrower of the money for the property. It states the legal description that identifies the property that's to be pledged as security for the debt. It identifies the lender and the borrower, so we know who all the players are. It should be signed by all parties involved. It identifies the obligations of the borrower and the rights of the lender. So, the duties of the mortgagor, who is the borrower. We're going to go over these, but default or breach of contract, once again, a refresher from chapter 11, If any of the contractual obligations are not carried out, the borrower is in default and the lender could foreclose. But before a lender forecloses, they'll generally give a borrower 30 days to cure any defaults. So, what are the obligations and duties of the mortgagor, the borrower? Pretty important to know, I guess, because if you don't carry them out, you're in default and they could foreclose and take your property. So you got to repay the debt according to the terms in the note. Okay, we all know that. You got to pay back, you got to make your mortgage payment, right? Otherwise, you're in default. You have to pay all the real estate taxes on the property. Well, that's important because if you don't, it could result in a tax foreclosure sale. We know how that works. It could wipe out all liens, including a first mortgage loan. So the lenders really want to make sure that you pay that one. Okay. So much so that they're going to try to convince you, try to get you to include it in your monthly mortgage payment. They'll even give you 1/8 of a point discount on your interest rate that you get if you include your real estate taxes and property insurance payments in your mortgage bill. So this way they know if they're being paid or not. Otherwise, it puts up a huge risk for their collateral, and there's no way that they could know if those payments are getting made or not. And that could put their loan at risk. So I think they should be giving us a better interest rate deduction for including those things in there. But either way, you must obtain the lender's permission before any major renovations. Ooh, did you know that? If you don't get your lender's permission before doing any major renovations or remodels or additions to your house, technically you're in default and the lender can foreclose on you. Did you know that?
I had no idea about that one.
Anybody know why?
Because the house is not yours yet?
Well,
And
it's pretty clear yours, but it is yours. You're just paying the debt down on it still. But why do they have that requirement that you need to get the lender's permission? Otherwise, you're considered in default. Well, what is the first part of any major renovation other than getting the permits? When they start the work,
Money.
what's the first thing they do when they start the work? What's the first step? Anybody ever remodel a kitchen or something? What's the first thing that you do when you start the work? What are you doing?
well,
Need to have a permit, right?
Come on, it's HGTV. Demo day, demolition. You gotta rip everything out first before you put stuff back in, right? So let's go with that kitchen remodel project. You gotta gut the kitchen, right? All right. Now you lose your job after you gutted that kitchen. Is the first thing on your mind, how am I going to finish my kitchen? Or is it going to be, how am I going to make my mortgage payment? How am I going to feed the kids? So if it gets to the point that you miss a couple of mortgage payments and they have to foreclose on you, what is the lender getting? What did you just do to their collateral?
a gutted kitchen.
You ripped out the kitchen. There's no kitchen there. So what did you do to their collateral? You devalued it, right? Can most people buy a house with a loan for a house that does not have a kitchen?
No, I don't think they would want to buy a house with no kitchen.
Lenders will not lend you
Without a
money.
house, without kitchen, it's not complete, say, house.
You're not going to get a loan. The only kind of loan you could get to buy a house without a kitchen is a construction loan. Normal loans will not allow you to buy a house without a kitchen. So you're either going to need cash buyer or somebody with a construction loan to purchase. And they're also not going to get all the, you devalued the property too. A house with no kitchen, you tremendously devalued it, right? So this is why the lender wants to make sure that you get their permission first, because they're going to want to see the project. They're going to see what your plans are, who you're going to have do the work, and where you get the money to do it. Do you have the money to finish the job? Or are you planning on just doing this little by little? Anybody here got a friend who's been doing work on their house renovation projects or something that seem like they're the never-ending renovation project and it's going on forever? Anybody got a friend like that? They're doing the work on their own house, and
Yep.
it's taking forever to get done. See, it's like an auto mechanic coming home and wanting to work on their car. You know, it's the last thing they want to do. You know, so it's a situation where people, they start the renovation, but then it takes them forever to do it. I had a friend like that. He gutted his kitchen and his dining room area, and you know, there was no sheetrock on the walls. You know, you could see the electrical wires, you know, between the framing. That's all that was there. For a year or two, one wife later, he finished the project. And then he started a new one. He put in a nice sliding glass door in the back that leads out to the porch. However, be careful. The first step is a doozy. He did not put the back porch in yet. Like the never-ending construction project in his house. You know, so if the lender knows about such things, you're really risking their collateral. So they could move forward with foreclosure, but generally they'll give you 30 days to cure any such default. So they'll give you 30 days to finish your project, get it done. Then you won't be in default. Maintain the property. It's, I guess, the same kind of scenario, because if you don't maintain the property, it could be falling apart. You're devaluing their collateral. Plus, it could cost the lender a lot of money. You know, we got an issue right now. We got a lot of people buying homes in our neighborhood over here, and they're tearing them down and then putting up these giant monstrosities. You know, in between, if they rent them or if they're in construction project phase, they just let the grass overgrow. And so the neighbors complaining about it because it makes the neighborhood look like crap. And it attracts rodents and such. So it's a health hazard too. So the municipality started giving out warnings. You get one warning and then you get a fine, $5,000 fine, for if your grass is over 6 inches. So they could start doing that to the lenders, you know, giving them $5,000 fines, $5,000 fine, $5,000 fine. And then if those fines aren't getting paid, the municipality could force payment of those fines through foreclosure. So it's very important to make sure the property is maintained. But it's not like the lender's driving by and stalking you and checking out your property or anything, right? But if you don't like your neighbor and they're letting that grass grow, or they got a construction project they never got the lender's permission for, you know, one could find out who their lender is and report them. I'm not saying to do that, but that'd be pretty mean. But let's see, secure permission before adding a second mortgage within 30 days. Yeah, to ensure that they're the first lender gets the primary lien position. Because what determines the order in which liens are repaid in the event of foreclosure? Their priority. And what determines the priority of lien repayment? What determines the priority of the liens and who gets paid back first?
The property taxes are priority. Wait.
Forget about property taxes. What about other liens? What determines the order in which liens are repaid? Property taxes are the exception. They jump to the head of the line always. But other liens determine
The length of the loan?
who recorded the lien first in the public records.
Yeah.
So that's why the lender wants you to secure permission before adding a second mortgage within 30 days to make sure that their lien is recorded first They don't want anybody jumping ahead of them. All right, so let's do some highlights and notes here for provisions for defaults, other clauses, and some notes. Make sure you write in these notes and do the highlights that I got here on the page.
Okay, I'm good.
Everybody good? Anybody still?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So, we'll talk about all these things. You guys made all these notes, right? First step in foreclosure, before this, a list pendants is recorded. This note, and then the one down at the bottom of the page about a reduction certificate. And that the lender, mortgagee is the lender.
I'm missing the bottom one.
Okay, make sure you get that.
Okay.
I'll give you guys a second. Just let me know when you got it. Says the reduction certificate does the same thing as an estoppel, but is signed by the lender. And I got a little cross-reference here to page 261 where they talk about reduction certificates in a couple pages from them.
I got it.
I got it.
Okay, everybody good now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so this is the same stuff that you just highlighted and wrote notes on in the previous slide. I just got it all here in this one slide. So provisions for default and other clauses in a mortgage. The acceleration clause is the first step in foreclosure. The lender accelerates the terms of repayment, calling the entire debt due and owing immediately. So this would assist the lender in foreclosing. How do you know when the lender implemented the acceleration clause? They'll stop making collection calls, and if you call them, they won't accept any payment from you unless you could pay the full outstanding amount due, plus including any late fees and penalties. That's how. So the acceleration clause is the first step in foreclosure. However, prior to enacting the acceleration clause, the lender will file a lis pendens in the public records. You guys recall what that is? A lis pendens is a public notice of possible future legal action against the property. That legal action being foreclosure. So by recording this in the public records, it puts the world on notice for any interested parties that may have an interest in your property that there's pending legal action against the property, foreclosure, that may be coming soon. So they usually record that in the public record when you fall behind at least 2 months on your mortgage payments. Now, does the lender start foreclosure right away? Is there a certain time frame? It depends on the lender. You know, I've had lenders, they did not record the list pendants, or they did record the list pendants, but they didn't foreclose on property for 5 years. It depends on the marketplace too, because that was during the the height of all the mortgage foreclosure stuff. You know, if the lenders are foreclosing on all these properties and taking possession of them, that means that they need to maintain them all and pay the taxes on them all, and that's a huge nut to carry and a lot of things to take care of. So the lender tries to put off foreclosure on so many properties at once when they're got so many in their inventory, because the more properties they foreclose on it and put up for sale, they're kind of shooting themselves in the feet, because supply and demand says what? If there's a lot of product, what does that on the market, what does that do to the price?
It makes it drop.
It makes it drop. So they would have to hold back on putting those properties on the market and just letting them out in drips and drabs. Otherwise, they're shooting themselves in the foot and they're lowering the property values. And when they try to do quick sales, that's going to lower it even quicker, and more and further. So they try not to do that if you're in the type of market where the property values are people are getting foreclosed on and stuff left and right because they're not making their payments because of the economy or something, you know. By the way, just before I came up after lunch, I didn't hear the full thing. I was just walking past the TV. I didn't hear the full thing, but Trump was on the air again talking about how well the economy is doing and how much money they've raked in this year so far with all the tariffs and other things. And he hasn't even fully implemented those tariffs. They've raked in so much money through trade deals and all kinds of tariffs and all kinds of other things that it was over $100 billion or something like that. And he's talking about sending out a check to the taxpayers for all of that extra money that he was able to raise, you know. But I was watching the news. It wasn't just a regular news channel; it was the financial news. So you get a truer picture and opinions from the financial experts, you know. And I like that the Fox Business channel. They're really good with the business stuff, and they got some good people there telling you about stock picks and all kinds of stuff. So they were talking. One of the ladies, she said, "Well, me personally, I'm not in favor of sending out the stimulus, just another stimulus check." You know, she's like, how about we use that money instead to start paying down the debt? Because if we give the stimulus check and we're only giving it to certain people, because he can't give it to rich people or people who have a moderate income even, because then they're going to complain that he's giving money to the rich people and his buddies and not the poor people. So he would be targeting only giving it to poor people who may not have contributed into the system as much too. So that was an argument from another view of somebody else. But yeah, I guess I would agree with that. Putting down, how about this? Paying down our debt, our national debt, you know, which is in the trillions. Putting it towards paying that down a bit. So the list pendants is a public notice of possible future legal action called foreclosure. All right, then we got a defaults. Defaults. Not default, defeasance clause, I'm sorry. The defeasance clause, it sounds like defeated, like you've been beat, right? Well, what did you beat? What has been defeated? Defeasance, defeated, defeasance, defeated. Get those two words together in your head. The defeasance clause sounds like defeated, means that when you've defeated the loan, you've paid that baby off in full. The lender has no further claim on the property because you've defeated it. So it's the defeasance clause that requires the lender to go back now in the public records and add a document called a satisfaction of lien or satisfaction of mortgage lien, to let the world know, searches the public records, that there's no further debt on the property. You paid off the loan, and the lender has no further interest in the property. So the defeasance clause is what requires the lender to add this additional document into the public record, confirming that you don't owe any money on the loan anymore and they have no interest in the property. So because you've defeated the loan. Defeasance, defeated. They sound similar, so try to correspond the two. Yeah, to remember what the defeasance clause is. It's when you defeated, defeasance, defeated. You defeated the loan. Okay? So when the debt's repaid, the loan's been defeated, the mortgagee, the lender, has no further claim on the property. This clause requires the lender to add a satisfaction of lien in the public records showing it's been repaid in full. It has been satisfied. These terms, you're going to see them on exams, without doubt. Acceleration clause. You got to know it's the first step in foreclosure. It assists the lender in foreclosure by accelerating the terms of the loan being called due and paying immediately. Lis pendens is a public notice of possible future legal action, that legal action being foreclosure when you're behind on your mortgage payments. And the defeasance clause is the clause that requires the lender, is the clause that states that the lien holder has no further claim on the property, and it requires them to file and record a satisfaction of lien in the public records. All right, an estoppel certificate is also a word you will get on exams. It's when the lender sells a loan. Yeah. How does banking work? Well, your lender will write a loan for you to borrow and buy a property. Most lenders do not hold on to their loans and service their loans for the 30-year term that you could have possibly gotten for that loan. So what do? They sell it. They sell it to an investor. So shortly after they write the loan, which we call loan origination, shortly after they originate the loan to the borrower to buy real estate, soon after, a couple months, they may be selling off your loan to an investor. Now that investor who's buying the loan will pay them back all of their money that they lent out, plus some of the interest that they're gonna make a lot of money on interest. So they're gonna pay off some of the interest as profit for that lender. And they may possibly hire that lender that they're buying the loan from to continue servicing the loan by sending out the bills and doing the collections and rendering accounting. Okay. That's how your local lenders, your banks and such, make money of loaning. They write loans, they originate loans, then they sell them, recoup all their money, get all their money back, plus some interest, maybe a servicing fee, and then they lend it out again and rinse and repeat. They keep doing the same thing over and over. That's basically how lending works in a nutshell. But that investor who's going to buy that loan, before they pay out all that money, they're going to want to confirm all the terms of the loan, and the amounts, the interest rates, and all that. And they do that by getting the borrower of that loan to sign an estoppel certificate verifying all the terms of the loan. And then they're also going to want the same from the lender who's selling them the loan. However, the document that the lender signs verifying all that same stuff is not called an estoppel certificate. It's called a reduction certificate. But it does the same thing. So a reduction certificate does the same thing as an estoppel certificate, but it's signed by the lender to verify all of those loan terms. It's given to the investor who buys the loan from the lender. Or when the property is being sold, to get a payoff statement for the closing agent to pay off the loan from the proceeds of the sale. They get a reduction certificate. It shows them what the payoff is. Okay. add that term estoppel certificate. You'll get it on exams. I doubt you get reduction certificate, but I got a full explanation here explaining what it is. A little bit better, a little bit quicker and easier and simpler than the book's explanation of it. Okay. So estoppel certificate and reduction certificate. Okay, so the note is a negotiable instrument that may be sold by the lender. Let's see. Assignment of the mortgage. The mortgage gets assigned. Satisfaction of lien is filed in the public records once the debt's been repaid, as required by the defeasance clause. And recording of mortgages. There's mortgage loans are recorded in the county where the property is located with all of the property ownership records. This would establish the date of recording would establish the priority of the lien. You know, let's all actually write that in there on that slide. Let's see. Date of recording. Establishes the priority of the lien. Before any documents can be recorded in the public record, they must be signed and acknowledged to confirm the signatures are genuine to prevent forgeries. So, what is an acknowledgement? An acknowledgement is a verification of who is signing a document. The purpose is to prevent forgeries. So an acknowledgement could be you get the documents notarized. A notary checks your ID or other, a notary, a judge, an attorney, or a trusted public official, AKA an elected politician, believe it or not. So they could all do acknowledgements. They just say that this person has appeared before me and produced sufficient evidence proving who they are, and then we witness them signing the document. Okay, that prevents forgeries. So, usury. Ooh, usury. Who's using who? What's going on here? Usury. Usury is illegal. We have laws to prevent usury. Usury is charging an illegally high rate of interest. Usury laws apply to private parties who lend, including seller financing. The purpose is to prevent loan sharking. Usury laws prevent loan sharking. You guys know what loan sharking is?
Yes.
You know, we all heard about the mob when the mob used to do it back in the day, right? They lend you a lot of money. And you better pay it back, even though it may be at a really high rate of interest. Otherwise, they may break your legs or something, you know. So it's to prevent these kinds of illegal lending practices, usury laws. At least that's what they say. What is considered usury? Well, seller financing in New Jersey, sellers can charge no more than 16% on a first mortgage of an interest rate. And they may charge as much as 30% when they're selling their own primary residence, and that's not considered usury. 30%? 16%? Yeah. Hell, you know, your parents, when they bought their house, I bet they were when they first bought their house, if they bought it like in the 70s, bet you they were in the teens on the interest rate. I'm surprised it's not there now after everything, but I guess we're doing a lot of mending and fixing a lot of the stuff that was broken. It was headed that direction, interest rates going up. But we managed to get it to plateau, and now our president is trying to get them to drop it. He keeps getting on that case of the guy who's running the Federal Reserve. You know, wants him to the Federal Reserve. You guys ever hear about that on the news? The Federal Reserve. You ever hear that term?
Yes, and
You guys, you guys know
the US dollar as well.
Yeah, you guys know what the Fed is? The Federal Reserve, the Fed, they often refer to it as. You know what that is?
The Federal Reserve, they print the US dollar, so they kind of know how much money there is printed in the real world. If I'm
No, that's the mint that prints the money. The Federal Reserve, the Fed, it's actually not a part of the federal government at all. It's all of the bankers, all those who own banks that are doing banking and lending in the United States are a member of this club they call the Federal Reserve or the Fed. Has nothing to do with the federal government at all. Although the federal government, we tried to appoint the head of the Fed, and hopefully they'll work with the president. Depending on the economy and the status, their job is to try to keep those interest rates as high as they can without breaking the economy. That's their job because they're the bankers. Their job is to make money. So they got to try to keep the interest rate as high as possible without destroying the economy. So that's why you're seeing the president, like right now, Trump is like every other day in the news about, the guy who's running the Federal Reserve, telling him, to lower the interest rates. I wish he had to lower the interest rates, Yeah, he could do that. He could lower the interest rates. So, basically all the bankers that do banking in the United States are a member of the Federal Reserve. Has nothing to do with the federal government. They often work with the federal government, but they're not the federal government. They are all the bankers. It's in other countries, they refer to it as the central bank. So the Federal Reserve is the central bank, the central banking system here in the United States. Basically, they're kind of like the rescue effort. If any bank was in danger of going under because all of the clients want to pull their money out of a particular bank, they could bankrupt the bank because the bank doesn't have all the money on hand to pay you back. So if all the depositors went to the bank to withdraw their money, your bank don't have it on hand. Your bank doesn't have that kind of money. So you would run them out of business. So the central bank, the Federal Reserve, would step in and give them a cash infusion to cover it so that they protect each other like this. Because a lot of times they take your money and they lend it out. Now, technically, that's not what they're doing, but they often lend out money that's not there. They wave a magic wand, they do some typing in a computer, but they don't have the money that they're lending to you. It doesn't make much sense right now, but I'm going to show you a little cartoon on it. Cartoon documentary movie called Money as Debt that will explain it. Yeah.
Never mind.
Shoot, go ahead. What's your question?
So is that what happened with the recession in 2008? That the Federal Reserve set a high interest rate that it crashed the economy, or is that like a different story?
No, different story altogether there. Look, the closest thing you get to the Federal Reserve in recent years is during the Obama administration, there were two banks that were going over. What was it that were in danger of going under? There was the Bank of New York, and there was one in California. I forget what they called it, what the name of it was. But anyway, those two banks you saw, uh, I mean, unfortunately, politics plays a role in banking. It should not. It should be about the numbers, the money, the interest rate, the state of the economy, and all that. But, politicians, they get their fingers everywhere, and then they get the supporters. So you had Biden trying to step in to save these two banks, who, by the way, were not FDIC insured or FSLIC insured. They were banks. They were big banks. They had a lot of people's money, and they didn't make the best decisions in investing to make sure that that money stays there. They started giving money away to support political agendas and groups, and they gave a lot of money to groups that were protesting and all kinds of things like that. There was all kinds of protesting groups in the streets that were, you had what was it? Black Lives Matter. They threatened to, they were threatening big businesses to ruin their reputation, if they didn't support their organization, because it doesn't sound good, if you don't support Black Lives, right? Well, that's not really what that organization was about. It's about a bunch of greedy people who ended up buying themselves a lot of houses and mansions and pissed away a lot of money. So bankers that start giving money to organizations like that, there was that group, and there was other groups, political groups, that anybody who goes against Trump, for an example, that they were throwing tens of millions of dollars at these groups. That's not an investment. How is that expected to ever pay back? So some of the people who had deposited money, their depositors there, they kind of woke up to that realization. I guess it took them a little bit longer to realize that, what is the bank doing with all this money? Where are they getting the money to do that? Is that money they're spending? Shit, I better go to the bank and withdraw my money. Right? Wouldn't you have that first response? If you see a bank throwing out money like that, wouldn't you be like, wait a minute, where are they getting all this money they're giving away? Is it mine? Maybe I should go to the bank and take my money out of it. And that's what a lot of these big, rich companies did. And then the president stepped in to put a stop to it. He froze all the assets of the banks and stuff. In reality, he should have just let them fail. There's no bank that's too big to fail. Let those banks fail, But these are banks that supported their politics, and their agendas. So he stepped in. It wasn't if it was federally insured, it's a different story. But they weren't even paying for federal insurance. But the president wanted to step in there and save them. President Biden. But then, a lot of groups in the political opposition said, no. You don't get to throw taxpayers' money at your supporters when they blow through money financing all this other nonsense. And now they're making poor financial decisions. And then the taxpayers supposed to support that and reimburse them to keep them afloat? No. Instead, they ended up negotiating, and I think they got who was it? They got one of the other major banks to step in and buy both of those failed banks. So they were able to negotiate that instead of having the taxpayer do it. So those two banks that went under were bought out. But anyway, the mortgage market crash, that was about a lot of different cogs in the gear for that one. You had borrowers who were lying on loan applications because they didn't need to prove anything because the lending standards were so low. You had things like stated income, stated assets, where you didn't need to prove how much money you make, and you didn't have to show your tax returns or bank statements. You could just state them on a form without showing any proof. So of course you had people lying on the applications so they could qualify for bigger loans. And now you have people getting multiple loans, buying multiple houses and doing investments and all kinds of stuff because it was so easy to get a loan. And some of them were using the wrong loan programs for their purposes. Adjustable rate mortgages have really low fixed interest rates for the first year or 3 or 5 years even of the loan and before it starts becoming adjustable. So people were buying houses using these adjustable rate mortgages. That's another part of it. And then when the interest rates adjust, they can't afford to make the payments. But that's fine. A lot of them took the risk. They took the gamble. They said, hey, if that does happen, I'll just refinance my loan into a fixed rate mortgage. Right? Well, that's a gamble. You're assuming that the real estate's going to keep going up, but what if the real estate market crashes? What is refinancing? Refinancing is getting a new loan to pay off the existing one. But what if the house is no longer worth it? There's no collateral there to cover the amount you're trying to get on that new loan to pay off the existing loan. That's what was happening. So people were they couldn't refinance those adjustable rate mortgages because the home's value was not there because the home's values have dropped tremendously. And then they're stuck with that adjustable rate mortgage with the interest rates went up, and now there's no way in hell they're going to be able to pay it off. They gotta get foreclosed on or do short sales with the banks in order to do this. So that was another part of it. There's a lot more to the story. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. Why were the banks lowering the lending standards? Why was it so easy to get these loans? Well, back in 2021, was it? No, 2021. Sorry. 2006. There was a guy who was appointed the head of the banking oversight committee, one of the politicians, were the head of the oversight for the banking. And his name was Barney Frank. If any of you may remember that guy's name. And he pulled in the bankers into the banking regulators, all of his investigators that are supposed to be making sure that all the banks are in compliance with banking standards and lending. And instead, he pulled in all of those regulators and started an inquisition with them, asking them, how many loans are being written? How many loans are being written to people of this race or that race or what have you? How many loans are being written for poor people to buy homes? And, the investigators, they were answering all the questions seriously. They were like, well, lenders are not allowed to look at a person's race in order that it's not a determining factor in whether they give a loan. That would be discriminatory. As far as the poor people, it goes based on debt to income ratio, credit scores. It's all about risk, calculating risk to determine who they lend to. And he was like, I don't hear any of that. He's like, if the banks don't start writing more loans to poor people and minorities, then I think they're engaging in racist activities, and we're going to pull the banking licenses, and we're going to fine them heavily. So banks were like, say what? They were listening. They were like, say what? They heard it. They heard the message loud and clear. So how do you write more loans to people? How do you get people to come to you to get a loan? Well, what about poor people? Let's talk about poor people first. How do you get poor people who know that they don't have the money to pay back such a loan? How do you get them to come in and want to get a loan? Maybe they can't qualify for the loan. You got to lower the lending standards, lower the qualifications in order to get a loan. But if you lower the lending standards for poor people now to be able to get a loan they normally wouldn't qualify for, what about all those people who already could qualify for a loan? They can now qualify for a bigger loan. So if homeowners know that there's a hot real estate market and people are buying properties, and the banks are allowing people to borrow more, what are the homeowners going to want for their homes when they put them up on the market for sale? It's a one-word answer. More. Right? They're going to want more. It's common sense. So that's part of what happened, why they started offering all these crazy loan programs that lowered the lending standards. Okay, now let's address the issue about giving more loans to minorities, people of color, Black people, Hispanics, etc. How do you get those people to come in and get a loan and want to get a loan from you? Well, it became known later on as predatory lending, because they start putting all the billboards up in areas where there's high populations of minorities. They target them on the radio stations and television programs that minorities are more likely to be tuning into. It's targeted marketing at a specific group based solely on their race. Okay, but listen, the banks were threatened to do this by the government, who threatened to take their licenses away and fine them heavily if they didn't. Now, later on, once all these people started defaulting on loans later on, whether it was the poor people or minorities or whoever it was, they were like, oh, it was those banks and their predatory lending practices. They're the bad guys. And it's like, but he just threatened. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't, right? They're just getting threatened by a politician. They'll yank their licenses and fine them if they didn't do it. So anyway, that's a little bit more of the background of the 2008. Well, actually, what was that?
Yeah, there's a lot to it, I see.
2000. Actually, no, the crash actually started in 2006 and went towards 2008. When that hearing occurred, it wasn't 2006, it was 2001. Sorry about that. It was 2001 when that occurred. Clinton was the president, I think, at the time, and then you had Barney Frank in there as the head of the banking commission. Okay, President Clinton had nothing to do with this. This had to deal with the banking, that head of the banking regulators. Yeah, so there was a lot of different wheels spinning. There's a lot of causes to it, So you could point the fingers at the bankers, or you could point the fingers at the real estate agents. You could point the fingers at the buyers who lied on applications. And they are even pointing fingers at the appraisers. Why are you appraising houses for these higher prices? Well, people were buying them for higher prices and the banks were allowing it, and some people were paying the cash too. So we appraise homes based on the market trends, the market direction, a lot of other factors. So the value was we got supportable evidence for that. So the real cause of this, if we traced it all back, you could trace it back to a politician. Amazing, a politician. But actually, if you actually question this guy today, he'll deny it. He'll say, I saved people. I saved the banking industry. And everybody on his party, on his side, is also coming to his protection. They're like, no. He saves things. He prevents racist activities from lenders and things of that nature. I'm like, he actually promoted and ended up causing this bubble, this real estate bubble, and the inflated prices, which went on for several years after that until the bubble burst. It started to burst in 2006. You really realized it in 2008, because that's when property values really started coming down at a steep angle. So yeah, there's a lot of cogs, a lot of gears in that cog right there for what happened in the 2006, 2008 mortgage crash that you're talking about, which lasted for several years. And then once again, politicians tried to step in to save the day by offering stimulus for buyers to rush out and buy homes, which all that did is prolong the inevitable market crash of those, which we'll get into when we get to that topic. But usury. So what is usury? It's charging an illegally high rate of interest, right? And there are usury laws that prevent that. So usury is against many religions as well. Now, I've had people in this class, they said it's against my religion to pay interest. It's true. Muslims, devout Jews, just about every religion at some point in time, it was against the religion to charge interest, any interest. And this is why. Let me jack up the volume on this and see if make sure that, let me also feed the computer sound to you. And let's go.
At one time, charging any interest on a loan was called usury, and was subject to severe penalties, including death. Every major religion forbade usury. Most of the arguments made against the practice were moral. It was held that money's only legitimate purpose was to facilitate the exchange of real goods and services. Any form of making money from simply having money was regarded as the act of a parasite or of a thief.
That's just a little teaser of this cartoon that this economist, this world economist came up with, explaining, kind of dumbing down how everybody can understand how banking industry and lending and borrowing works and how the economy works as a whole. He does a really good job explaining it. You guys, it's a 47-minute video. I'm going to show you guys about 15 minutes of that. We're going to watch later in this chapter or the next. I'm not sure, but it's coming up. But this is a little teaser just when they talk about usury and how many religions it was against the religion. And in days gone by, usury, the act of usury, charging interest, was the act of a parasite or a thief that could be enforced by death penalty. So interest rates, let's see, when we talk about usury, is a laws in place to prevent charging higher interest rates, right, from private lenders. However, the IRS can step in if you're not charging a high enough interest rate. The IRS can step in and impute a higher interest rate so that they could tax it accordingly, so they could get their fair share of your money. And they're not even targeting rich people on this. Look at this. It applies to transactions of $2.8 million or less. The IRS says that the lender must charge at least 9% interest or an amount equal to the applicable federal rate, the AFR, whichever is lower. Currently, we are still below the 9%. So they're charging whatever the current rate is, whichever is lower. There's another reason to get rid of that agency called the IRS. Okay, prepayment penalties are not allowed in New Jersey. No prepayment penalties allowed if a loan is paid off sooner than originally planned. However, no prepayment penalty rule only applies to institutional lenders on federally related loans. So if the loan is paid off any earlier than originally planned, no prepayment penalties are allowed. So just study that for exams. No prepayment penalties ever allowed in New Jersey. Just study that and just know that. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a comment about that. I once went to this furniture store and purchased couches, and I paid it before the loan was due, and then they billed me another $100. And I was like, why am I getting charged another $100 when I paid off the loan already? And they're like, oh, because you paid it off early. And I was like, what?
Yeah. And look, we're studying no prepayment penalties are allowed in New Jersey, and that's the correct answer that you need to know for exams. However, in real life, there are some loans that can charge prepayment penalties. And those are private loans, the commercial ones, the ones that are not institutional lenders. You see, there's a little word in there, a little keyword in there that you kind of let it pass. New Jersey law, an institutional lender may not impose a prepayment fee or a penalty if the mortgage is fully paid off earlier than was originally planned. Okay, so that's the answer that we need to study and know for exams. But know in real life, commercial loans and private loans that are not coming from institutional lenders, they're allowed to charge prepayment penalties. As a matter of fact, the building that I have my school in right now used to be owned by one of my friends and his brothers. When they sold it to the current owner, the building, the closing date that they had would have cost them a $75,000 prepayment penalty. There's a commercial loan. So what they did is they delayed the closing for 3 months, so they didn't have to pay that $75,000 prepayment fee or penalty. $75,000. Holy shit. All right, so no prepayment penalties allowed in New Jersey. That's what you should study and know for exams. First and second mortgages, mortgage loans on real estate. The priority is based on the date of recording in the public records. How many times have we heard that? Wonder if that's going to be on an exam sometime in the future. All right. So, determines the priority, the recording date in the public record. That determines who gets paid first in the event of foreclosure. So, the title of this should actually be first and yeah, we'll do like this. First and second mortgage. Lien priority. So what determines the priority of lien? The date of recording in the public records. And that priority is will determine who gets paid back first in the event of foreclosure. Home equity loans are often a second mortgage. They are rarely a first. Subordination agreements allows a primary lien holder to drop from repayment order, becoming subordinate to a junior lien. Why would they want to do that? If a lender has the top priority, the first priority in the lien repayment order, why would they drop back in the lien repayment order? Well, perhaps if it's a smaller loan, it's going to go to only increase the value of the collateral, like a home improvement loan. They don't see that in the event that that doesn't get paid back and they have to foreclose, that's not going to wipe out the entire interest of the larger loan. So if they drop back in lien position, that smaller loan would get paid back, and then you would have the former first lien holder right behind them. So they would still get paid back. Plus, remember, what is the purpose of this loan? To increase the value of the property, right? To do improvements, which is going to increase the value of that collateralized property. So, first lender agrees to subordinate. That means drop back in the lien repayment order. The first loan then becomes a second in the lien repayment order. Sometimes done to allow further financing, usually for things like home improvement loans. This loan is much smaller than the first loan and would not wipe out the lender's interest if a smaller loan were to jump ahead of them and they needed to foreclose. The home improvement loan increases the value in a smaller loan. So if foreclosed, there would be money left over to pay off the original lender in the first lien position that had dropped back to the second. There we go. There's my full explanation that I wrote there. So that you guys can have it. Better explanation than what the book gives. Okay. You guys got the notes?
Yeah.
Yes.
So mortgage loans have been, when all mortgage loan payments have been made and the note is paid in full, the mortgagee, that's the lender, is usually required to execute a release of mortgage or satisfaction of mortgage. So as the lender is required to do per the defeasance clause that says once you defeated the loan, you paid back that baby, the lender has no further interest in the property. Okay, so let's also write this little note down here under reduction certificate. Put that little cross reference there. See page 259 notes. This is on page 261. And reduction certificate does the same thing as an estoppel certificate, but it's signed by the lender who verifies the terms and the payoff amount to the investor who buys the loan or the closing agent when a home is being sold or when a loan is getting paid off. Okay. So you write that underneath reduction certificate on page 261. One, 260. Oh, wait, no, we already had that written on the notes. Did we, on the previous page? Yeah. No, it's the same thing as an estoppel, but signed by the lender. No, I had that in my notes that you could have snapped a picture of. Is there room to write this anywhere here? Page 260 or 261? Estoppel. I don't have any of that stuff written in my book, so I don't know if you could fit that in there or not. Or if you guys could just snap a picture of
Yeah.
this.
There's a space on 261.
Okay.
The
You guys hearing that? You guys hearing that noise? Sounds like a vibrating noise, like boom, 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 boom. It's really deep.
no,
I don't know. Something's going on outside my house somewhere. There's a boom, boom, boom. I don't know what the hell that noise is. Just want to make sure it's not bothering you guys. It's starting to give me a headache. All right. So everybody got this?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So satisfaction of mortgage lien is a document recorded in the public records by the lender stating the loan's been satisfied, it's been repaid in full. The lender has no further claim on the property, and the defeasance clause requires the lender by law to record a satisfaction of mortgage lien in the public record once the borrower paid off the loan. assuming a seller's mortgage loan. What does that mean? To assume a loan, it means to take it over. You're taking over someone else's loan payments. However, just like with subleasing, the primary mortgagor gives up liability to pay it back. So if somebody takes over your loan payments and then they fail to make the loan payments, you still hold primary responsibility to pay it back. Now, most loans are not assumable. Okay. Why are they not assumable? Because the lenders make money off of originating loans too. Sometimes they charge application fees and all that. Plus, if somebody's able to take over your loan, you could sell them the house a lot easier and they don't have to qualify for the loan. They could just take over your loan. So they may make a payment to you and then just take over your loan payments. Problem with that is that what if it's a lower interest rate loan than what you could get in the current market? That'd be good for the buyer who could just take over the loan of a seller. But the banks won't make as much money. So banks want you to get a new loan, especially at a higher interest rate. That's how they make money. And they make lots of it. So alienation clause, also known as the resale due on sale clause in the note. Yep. This states that upon transfer of ownership, the loan must be repaid in full. I don't know why it's a separate bullet point. Alienation clause, also known as the resale or due on sale clause in the note. Okay. It states that upon transfer of ownership, the loan must be repaid in full. It prevents the loan from being assumed, taken over by a new owner, especially if it's at a lower interest rate. Loans without an alienation clause can be assumed. Because what does an alienation clause say? What is the purpose of the alienation clause? It says it's also known as the resale or due on sale clause. So if you're reselling the property, the loan is due on sale. You got to pay it back in full. What is the purpose of that? To prevent the loan from being assumed. Why? So banks can make more money writing new loans, of course, silly. So, loans that do not have an alienation clause, technically, I guess that means that they can be assumed because they're not requiring it to be paid back in full when you transfer the ownership. So technically speaking, yeah, you could sell your house without paying off the loan, as long as you continue making the mortgage payments on it. And if that's the case, is it possible maybe I could give somebody seller financing then? And then I just charge a little higher interest rate than what I'm paying on my loan? And someone just takes over my loan? Why would anybody do that? Or maybe because their credit sucks and they can't get a loan themselves. Plus, it could save some money with the application fees, appraisal fees, and all that stuff. You're just taking it over. You don't have to, it's quick too. So loans with an alienation clause can be assumed or taken over by the new owner, who can just continue making payments on the existing loan. This could be beneficial if that loan is at a lower interest rate than currently available to those who get new loans in the current market. And the new owner wouldn't have to qualify for the loan or pay any closing costs. However, most newer assumable loans wouldn't require the new owner to qualify and can be approved for the loan before they can assume it. So even loans today that are assumable, the borrower will most likely have to qualify for the loan. But you need to know, this could be a question just in itself. Alienation clause is also known as the resale or due on sale clause. Yeah, go ahead. What was your question?
If the new homeowner is qualified to get the loan, would it still be at the lower rate?
If the that you're assuming is at a lower rate, yes. Did you know that most FHA and VA loans are assumable?
I did not.
Your lender tries to throw in their alienation clauses in there or tell you that it's not assumable, but most of them are.
I was asking because my mom always wanted to do something like that, but she was fearing of the interest rate being higher and
Yeah,
never did it.
you're just taking over the loan. So you're taking over the loan at whatever interest rate the current person has it at. But before you go do this, make sure that the loan is assumable.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah. All right. Let's highlight alienation, also known as due on sale or resale clause. And what is the purpose of it? To prevent some future purchaser of the property from being able to assume the loan, particularly at its old rate of interest. If it's lower, if it's higher, lender don't care. Assume away, right? Yeah, that's the whole point. They want to make more money. They want higher interest rates. Is that the job of the Federal Reserve? Keep interest rates as high as possible without breaking the economy.
Done.
Very good.
Done as well.
All right, so let's learn about foreclosure. What is foreclosure? Well, when a borrower defaults in any of the obligations of the mortgage, this may result in foreclosure. The lender typically gives the borrower 30 days to cure any default. Then a lis pendens is recorded in the public records as a public notice of possible future legal action, which is foreclosure against the property. Basically, the lender taking the property. Yeah, oh, I have that written here. Foreclosure is the legal process of a lien holder, the lender, taking ownership of a property through court action which has been pledged as collateral for the loan. And I got to reword that a little bit nicer, actually. Got to word it a little backwards. Which, there we go. Is the legal process of a lien holder taking ownership of a property which has been pledged as collateral for a loan through a court action. The first step of starting foreclosure is enacting the acceleration clause in the notes. There we go. That's better. That's written a lot better. I had it written kind of backwards there. Let me go to the notes and replace everything I wrote in the notes, dude. All right, so let's continue reading here. So foreclosure is the legal process of a lien holder or lender taking ownership of a property which has been pledged as collateral for the loan through a court action. The first step of starting foreclosure is enacting the acceleration clause in the note, calling the entire debt due and owing immediately, right? Or we could even add that in there. Calling the entire debt due and owing immediately. Or due immediately. There we go. Again, I gotta go back and place that in my notes. Good. All right, so the lender may ask the court to order the foreclosure sale, also known as a auction or sheriff's sale. Before a sheriff's sale can take place, all interested parties, including renters, need to be made aware the foreclosure is in progress. And this sometimes creates a problem for owners trying to get caught up on their payments to avoid the foreclosure if those tenants were to stop paying the rent. And they often do. So the owner should take immediate action to evict such tenants who create these problems. Then a sheriff's sale needs to be advertised in a local newspaper for 4 weeks and a paper in Trenton. And then they have the sheriff's auction. The auction may be delayed twice, 2 times for 2 weeks each time by the mortgage owner. So that's for a grand total of 1 month that they could delay it. And the mortgagee, the lender, who can also delay it twice for 2 weeks, another month. So for a grand total of 2 months total. On average, how long does it take to close a house? To close on a house, how long does it take? 60 days on average? So bidders must pay cash, at least 20% at the auction. The balance must be paid within 10 days, at which time a sheriff's deed, called a bargain and sale deed, because there's nothing really called a sheriff's deed, even though they write sheriff's deed on top of it, there's no deed that's called a sheriff's deed. It's called a bargain and sale deed. They just write the word sheriff's deed on top of it. It's delivered to the successful bidder. The mortgager may repay all outstanding fees and redeem the property before the end of the 10 days when the sheriff's deed is delivered. But after that, no further right of redemption exists in New Jersey. So, if somebody is going through foreclosure, can we save them from foreclosure? Yeah, it's possible, especially if the sheriff's sale has not been scheduled yet. Then we can put the property on the market, gives us a little time to try to find a buyer. And even if there's a sheriff's sale that then gets scheduled, we could still continue going through with the process, get it through attorney review, get the home inspections done, and all the other inspections and work that needs to get done by the buyer. And we're just racing, trying to close on the sale now before the sheriff's sale occurs. But even after a sheriff's sale occurs, if we still did not close on the sale of the property, we still have 10 additional days after a sheriff's sale before the deed is delivered to that winner of that sheriff's sale, that sheriff's auction. We could still close on the sale, pay back all the lien holders. It basically undoes the auction. So the sheriff's department will give the money back to the successful bidder that they collected, and they don't get the property. The homeowner can sell the property or get caught up on their payments, what have you. But usually it's through a sale, and then they can walk away with more money in their pocket. Because which one will net you more money? A traditional sale or an auction? Why do people go to auctions? To get deals, right?
Yeah.
So they're not gonna, if we were to do a traditional sale, we could probably get more money from that homeowner and save them from the foreclosure. I mean, they're still losing their house, they gotta sell it, but hey, it's better than it getting taken from you and sold at an auction, and then at a lower price. And then the proceeds may not even be enough to pay off the loan of what you owe. And even if they are able to pay off the proceeds of any balance on any loans that you have, if there's any excess money after all the loans are paid, that's the seller's equity. That's the owner's equity who got foreclosed on. So they'd be getting that money back. But if they did a traditional sale, you'd get a lot more money than you would have selling at an auction. This is why it's always better if somebody's if somebody's facing foreclosure, they need to snap into reality quick and not just put all the paperwork in the mail and open it and stick it on the table there on the side. Because sometimes all this will happen and they will be unaware of it until a sheriff's knocking on their door to drag them out with their belongings and kick them out on the street. Because the property's been sold at auction, there's a new owner, now they got to get the hell out. You know, it's a lot better if you were participating in that sale, trying to sell it before the foreclosure occurred. You could net more money from the sale and walk away with a heftier profit. Can somebody get foreclosed on if they paid off the majority of their loan? They owe very little money on their house. Can they still get foreclosed on?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So this does happen where people do get foreclosed on, where they have the majority of the loan paid off. They practically owed nothing, but bills pile up or medical reasons, or they lost their job, causes them to be unable to make those last few payments. And they could get foreclosed on and lose their house. They sell it at auction at a bargain basement sale, just so the price so that the lender can just get back the small money that's owed to them. But there's a lot of equity built in there that would go back to the homeowner. But they're not going to get as much if they sold it at auction versus a traditional sale. So if that homeowner took action and sold it earlier, came to the realization they may lose their house if they don't pay off, if they don't get the money to pay off those last few payments, then they're going to lose it. And they could have sold it with us and netted a lot of equity. I've done this several times for people. And the race is on where we try to get that, we put in the delay twice, then we got to contact the lender to put in the delay twice. The lender will work with us because the lender just wants the money, you know. And foreclosure is a costly process, even for the bank. It costs them money. Sheriff's Department gets a slice of it. All right. So that's how foreclosure works. So let's just write here, the successful bidder must pay cash at least 20% at the auction and the rest within 10 days until a sheriff's deed is delivered to the buyer. After that, no further right of redemption exists in New Jersey. And then write on the side here, bargain and sale deed says sheriff's deed on top. Because there's no deed called a sheriff's deed. Even though they call it a sheriff's deed, it's actually a bargain and sale deed. Let me know when you got that.
Yeah, got it.
I got it as well.
All right.
Done.
An alternative to foreclosure. Here are some other alternatives to foreclosure. A deed in lieu of foreclosure. No, it is not French once again. It is Latin. I know some of these words in France are similar, but there's a lot of languages that are based on Latin. And a deed in lieu of foreclosure is an alternative to foreclosure, where some people refer to it as friendly foreclosure because it's by an agreement rather than a court action, where the borrower just simply signs the deed back over to the lender, giving them the collateral back. So, this is a little bit risky for the lender to accept though, because, well, if there's any other liens on the property, foreclosure would have wiped them out. So there's a disadvantage to the lender that they may be taking the ownership with other additional liens on it that they're going to then have to pay back. So if the lender resells that property within 90 days, they could get a deficiency judgment against the mortgagor who defaulted. Uh-huh. So a lender, even though they may accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure, they're never going to give you a satisfaction of lien document by when they just accept the deed back. Because if they manage to resell that property within 90 days, well, now they've experienced a loss, a deficiency. So now they could go to court and get a deficiency judgment and chase after the owner, the mortgagor who defaulted on the loan. Okay, but it's just another one of those alternatives, and we need to if a lender contacts a property owner and tells them that they're willing to accept the deed in lieu of foreclosure, but we have a property listed with them for sale, to do a short sale, to negotiate with their lender to accept less than what was owed. Well, remember, we can't guarantee that an offer is going to come in just because we put it on the market. And we can't guarantee that the offers that come in is going to be good enough for the bank to be willing to accept it. So there's no guarantees with a short sale either. However, if we do get a short sale through, and the lender accepts it, they can't chase after the borrower for any deficiencies because we usually get them to sign a satisfaction of mortgage lien saying paid, settled, less than full amount owed, and they can't chase after them for any deficiencies. Now, when there's many loans on the property that are outstanding, 2, 3 loans, the more loans on the property, the more that those other lenders can chase after them for deficiency. But we try to negotiate with them because the law now allows, and a lot of lenders allow, to pay off 10% of the proceeds from the sale to the junior lien holders, just for them to go away and agree with the short sale. So we could get them to agree to just take that as a payoff, even though they may be owed $100,000 or more. We're giving them 10% of whatever's owed, and they'll walk away. Hopefully, some of them will try to get the owner to sign documents where they'll still owe them money or have to make them payments. But, we could just whisper in the owner's ear, tell them to go screw themselves. And because if they require that, we're just going to allow the primary lien holder to foreclose, and it totally wipes them out and they get nothing. And then you'll just file bankruptcy and they can't chase after you for squat. So we got 10% on the table for you to take it or leave it. See, now here's where negotiation comes into play. But you should not be doing that negotiation. You should be helping the owner do that negotiation. Otherwise, the lender is going to try to take advantage of them, maybe even threaten them. I've had some lenders, though, they went and got deficiency judgments before they even got the property, before they agreed to do the short sale. Your deficiency judgment is what? What is a judgment? It's a decree from a court saying, you owe this person money. Okay, deficiency judgment means that you did not pay somebody back everything you owed them. So the judgment says you need to pay them back that difference. That's what a deficiency judgment is. And REO stands for real estate owned. It's actually a bank owned property that was already foreclosed on. There's no debts or liens attached to it. It is owned free and clear by the bank. It's called a REO property. Stands for real estate owned. It's owned by the bank. Okay. So let's highlight DDU and REO. Make our notes there. Let me know when you guys get that.
Done.
Everybody got it?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me know when you got it.
All right, got it.
Okay. So you could use these three little words to prevent or to postpone a foreclosure. It's called produce the note. And this is a strategy that has been used many times successfully. What is a note?
Financial instrument.
Well, what does it do? That financial instrument. It's the financing instrument. But what does that financing instrument do?
Helps pay.
It makes you personally liable for the full amount owed, even after foreclosure, if there's a deficiency. Can debt collectors collect on debts if they can't prove that they have a debt, that you owe them money? What do you think? Can a debt collector collect on money on a debt that they can't prove that you owe?
So how they cannot prove is that you took a loan?
Any debt collector, credit card,
Mhm.
cards,
No,
anything.
they cannot.
Yeah, no, they can't collect on a debt if they can't prove that you don't owe them the money. And what is the proof? Has to be some original document that you signed with a pen. At the closing table, you close on a mortgage. You sign all this paperwork, right?
Yeah, but the credit card, all those things, we are not signing by the pen.
Real estate now. So now with the real estate, they got to put, well, even with credit cards, it's the same story, even with credit cards. But let me not talk about that. I want to stay focused here on this. Even all the paperwork that you signed to get that loan at the closing table, there's documents in there. You're signing the mortgage note that makes you personally liable for repaying back all the money, even in the event of foreclosure. There's not enough proceeds from that sale of the collateralized property that you put up for collateral to pay it off. So the lender's proof is that document you signed. So if you're getting foreclosed on, you could try to delay or even prevent foreclosure by opening up some of that pile of letters that you've been getting from the court and from the lender saying that you owe the money and there's a court date and they're foreclosing, and actually show up to court. And you don't need to self-incriminate yourself by saying I owe the money to the bank. You could just say, Your Honor, I'm here today to ask the lender to produce the note. If they cannot produce that original document that you signed, which I doubt they'll have it with them that day, they can't prove that you owe the money. They can't prove that you owe the money. They can't take your property as collateral.
Hmm.
Because where's the pledge? I'm asking you to show me that pledge. Show it to me. You say I owe you money. Produce the note. And courts are very responsive to that because they expect everybody to follow legal procedures, you know? I mean, if you're going to try to collect a debt on somebody, shouldn't you have some kind of proof that they owe you money? Isn't that what court's all about? Proof? Evidence? Not just, hey, he owes us money. Prove it. Your Honor, you're not gonna force me to pay them money when they can't prove that I owe them money, are you? You're also not going to ask me to produce evidence against myself and admit that I owe money, are you? Right? So, here we go. Produce the note.
All right, joining today by Peter Murphy and Terry Smiljanich. Tell us why ConsumerWarningNetwork.com got some national play this past week with an idea to helping people in foreclosures, and that is what?
That is called Produce the Note.
Is it like Show Me the Money?
Yeah, Show Me the Money, exactly. It's on our website, and it's received a lot of national attention. AP, CNN, ABC, a lot of different entities. And what it is, it's an attempt to provide some help to people that are in foreclosure,
okay,
and who are just simply trying to slow things down so that maybe they can work with the bank a little more, because the bank's not returning their calls, is not willing to work with them. They hear about these Obama plans and other plans, and they'd like to participate in them. But meanwhile, the sheriff's knocking on the door, and they're going to be foreclosed next week. Well, what we talk about on our website is the idea of a simple request to the lender who's suing you, saying, let me see the note. You say, I owe you this money, and it's based on a note, a mortgage. Let me see the original note, not a copy of it. Let me see the original, because whoever holds that original is the one that has the right, to enforce the debt.
Well, I thought these things had been sliced and diced and chopped up and bundled and sent off to wherever.
The problem is
right?
There's still an original note somewhere. But it's been chopped up and diced and sold and resold and resold. And what it forces the mortgage lender to do is say, ooh, where is the note? And they have to go find it. And maybe sometimes.
Let me stop for a second there, because something just kind of just passed over our heads. They're talking about it was resold and resold and resold. What are they talking about? Well, when you write a loan, when the lender writes out a loan, they originated the loan to you.
Yeah, and then it's reselling to other.
Yeah, they sell it to an investor.
Yeah.
Now, these banks and lenders, they sell off thousands of loans at a time, hundreds or thousands of loans at a time to these investors. Sometimes when banks or these investors even are holding on to all of these loans and collecting the payments on them, some people don't make payments on some of their mortgages. They're defaulting. If a lender, a lien holder, has too many non-performing loans in their books, they can lose their license to be involved in banking and lending. So how do banks get those bad loans off their books that are not performing? Well, they package them up with enough good ones, and so that it's enticing enough for another investor to be willing to buy all those good loans packaged with a bunch of bad ones, but enough good ones that makes the deal sweet enough that it's worth it for them to take on. They call this mortgage-backed securities.
Mm.
They sell off those loans to another investor or lien holder and get them off their books. This is how banking works. It's kind of crazy, but that's the way that it works, and that's what he's talking about right here. So if that loan was sold by one from the originating lender to another lender, then they sold it to someone else, then they sold it to someone else. Whose warehouse in what box is all these loan documents that you signed? Especially when they're selling thousands of them, they got to find the paperwork for all of them, box them up, send them over to the other lender. The other lender got to put them and file them and somewhere. Did they get around to it yet? Because there was thousands of them, and then it was already sold before they even got the paperwork from the first one. Where's the paperwork? So if you go to court and you say produce the note, it's not that they just don't have it there that day in court. They may not even know where the hell it is.
They can't find it, they can still go to court and say, well, we can't find the note, but here's the proof that we have that we're the appropriate. So it's not.
And he kind of just threw that out there. Well, it's difficult for the lender to do. If they lose the note, they could try to get a new note reissued. But how exactly does that work? You'd still need to prove that this person has a loan from you and owes money. And you do that with those original documents, not copies. So that could take a very long time to do, could be very expensive, and it may be possible that they can't get one reissued. And if that were to happen, the lender would be screwed because they can't collect any money for what's left on that mortgage loan. So it's not a way for deadbeats to get ownership of property by simply not paying the bills and then saying produce the note, because it may be possible for them to eventually get a note reissued. But it's also possible that if you do it, that you can get away with it as a deadbeat and not, do away with the loan. So that is a possibility. I know they try washing that under the rug over here because they don't want people to go out and start trying to do this all the time and then screw over lenders, but it's a possibility. Even though they're trying to say, oh, it's not a way for that to happen, but it's possible.
A way to help like deadbeats or something and to just stay in a home for free.
Because if they find the note, you're still going to be foreclosed on.
You're still going to be foreclosed on. But if it buys you an extra 8 months where you can work with the bank and try to modify, and maybe also people that have adopted the strategy, what we've seen often is that because they've taken that approach, suddenly the lender has gotten a lot more interested in returning their phone calls and working with them.
It gets them actually in dialogue with
the squeaky. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and so they get a little more attention from the bank, and they're willing to maybe work with them. So it's not a magic bullet of any kind, but it is an approach that people who are in those kind of desperate straits where they're about to have their property sold out from underneath their feet, to buy some time to see if they can work something out.
And you've seen it work for people.
Oh, we've seen it work for people, and there's lawyers in other states that have told us they've adopted the strategy, and they found that courts are very receptive to it.
Show me the note.
Show me the note.
That's fascinating.
Right.
See, it's good to know these things and have some of these tools on your side. Other classes aren't teaching you this. When you go for a real estate licensing, this is extra stuff that I'm giving you, but it's very good knowledge to have. All right.
This is really good knowledge. Yeah. Good things.
You can help your clients produce the note while you're trying to sell the property. Then you buy more time away from foreclosure too, right? Can't foreclose on you if they can't prove that you owe them money, but you can still go and sell the property and then pay back the loan, and then you'd be done with it.
Hello, I'm Angie Moreski. The important question now is how can you use the Produce the Note strategy to help you save your home? Attorney John Yanchunas is joining us today to help give you some tips on how to proceed. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, first question here, is this something that anybody facing foreclosure can use?
Everybody should use it. Everybody should put the lender to the task of establishing that it owns the debt that it claims that you owe to it.
Now, is there a good indicator? I noticed as I've looked through some of the mortgage foreclosure complaints that the lenders file with the court, some of them actually have these counts in them that say reestablishment of note, and then the wording is actually the mortgage note has either been lost or destroyed, and the plaintiff is unable to state the manner in which this has occurred. They're admitting that they lost or destroyed the note.
Well, obviously, that's the the best sign available that the lender doesn't have the note mortgage any longer.
So if you see that, or if you want to just try Produce the Note strategy, what's the first thing you should do?
Request through discovery that that instrument be produced to you. Once that's served on the lawyer representing the plaintiff's lawyer has got to respond within 30 days with the document requested. If it does not, then the consumer needs to go to court and ask the court to compel the plaintiff to produce that document.
So literally a letter or a document that you send to the court, and we'll have a template on the website to help people through that process. And why is that so important to prove what?
Well, it's important to prove that the lending institution that is suing you.
Let's stop right there. One thing what it does is the lender may be able to show that you've been making mortgage payments or you've been making payments, but that does not mean that you put that house up as collateral for the loan. So if they can't produce the note, they can't prove that the house serves as collateral for the loan. So it's an unsecured loan.
Lending institution that is suing you on the note or to foreclose your home is in fact the owner of the debt. The lending institution which originated the note and mortgage, the debt, may no longer be the owner. It may have transferred it to another institution, which in turn may have transferred it to another lending institution, and so on and so forth.
And you should also be careful looking at the fees and penalties that they're rolling into this request. Is that right?
That can be collected like property inspection fees, late charges, but so frequently we found that some lending institutions collect sums of money which are simply made up. They're, I think, designed to increase the lender's bottom line. For instance, a foreclosure fee, a pre-bankruptcy fee.
So keep an eye on all those fees which may be unfair and unwarranted.
Absolutely. In fact, you should ask the lender for proof that that sum of money was paid.
Obviously, if you're behind in your mortgage, this is not a way to just get your house for free. What are we trying to do here?
Well, it gives the consumer leverage or buys the consumer time to work out with that lending institution a repayment plan of the arrearage or the default.
Do you think judges will be receptive to this?
Oh, absolutely. I've tried it many times. I've done it for many years. Judges expect lawyers and parties who come before them to adhere to the letter of the law.
So if I'm the homeowner and I end up before a judge, what do I say? What's my plea?
Well, what I want is the lender to produce the original note and mortgage. If they cannot, then put them to the task of establishing why they can't, and that they are in fact the owner of the note and mortgage. And of course, more importantly, or just as important, that every element of the debt that the lender claims that the consumer owes is in fact owed.
And the ultimate goal here is perhaps to get the lenders to be more receptive to negotiating fair terms so that a homeowner can actually stay in that home and keep their home.
Absolutely. The whole concept of equity, which is the principle which allows mortgages to be foreclosed, is a concept of fairness. And one of the most important principles in equity is equity abhors a forfeiture. That means that property that secures an obligation should not be forfeited unless the letter of the law has been followed.
It's a pretty big thing to lose your home, so you should fight for it.
It's the most important asset that any consumer will ever have.
Okay, John, thank you very much. We appreciate your time here today.
Thank you.
All right. Another.
With so many people losing their homes, this report from 7 on Your Side can help. You could be able to freeze a foreclosure by saying 3 simple words. Michael Finney is here tonight with what they are, and Michael, why they might work for you.
Yeah, the idea is really pretty simple. The homeowner saying to the lender, produce the note. Now, that's legal shorthand for prove I owe you the money. American mortgages have been sliced and diced, bundled into complex financial vehicles, then sold around the world.
I think the note has been sold on so many times, and they've become very sloppy with their paperwork. It could be on a dumpster somewhere, for all I know.
And for all the banking and financial managers know, too. And that's becoming a safety net for homeowners. If the loan servicer can't prove they're collecting the money legally, the homeowner is off the hook, at least temporarily.
We've never seen a company produce the original note yet.
We've never seen a company produce the original note. Well,
Attorney Chris Hoyer set up this website offering consumers advice and paperwork
don't bother trying to go there. That website's not up anymore.
to pursue a produce the note strategy. In Florida, the strategy is forcing lenders to stop proceedings, buying homeowners precious time.
$100 going twice.
But it has apparently never been tried here in California. Till now.
They saved our house. She's the one that works day and night, day and night, day and night on this house. See, we don't understand none of this. She's the one that did it.
That's Isabel and Richard Caparelli. This is their home, and attempting to save it, Deborah Caparelli, their daughter-in-law. A different Florida attorney helped her by email.
First, he said, have your bankruptcy attorney file an amended schedule listing this property as unsecured. Okay? Unsecured means that Saxon, the servicer, would have to stand up and say, it's secured, we have the note.
The Caparelli's attorney, Mark Voisnat, did that, allowing him to then say, produce the note. And today, the Caparellis went back to court, hoping to be the first in a long line of homeowners successfully using the produce the note strategy in California.
The judge gave us more time, and it seemed that they can't find the note yet. So we got hopes, lots of hopes.
Nothing was decided today, but the note has still not been produced.
They claim they have it, but I have no proof that they have this note. And so you would think by now, it's been almost 3 months, they would have pulled out a copy if they had it.
A recent study has found those documents are being lost an astounding 40% of the time. Now, even without the note, the banks can eventually collect if they can prove they have the legal right to a note and they can have another one issued. But that takes time, and for many in foreclosure, time is needed to straighten out their financial situations.
Well, produce the note.
Produce
3
the
words.
note.
It
Yeah.
could save you some time.
Yep.
Thanks, Michael, very much.
Wow.
How
about this? Check this story out. I recreated it because I don't subscribe to the New York Times, and I think this was a New York Times article. So I found the whole story and recreated it here through various news sources. But check this out. Here's this lady right here. Here's a picture of her. What's her name? Patsy something or other. We'll see, Patsy Campbell. So this one lady used the produce the note strategy along with many other strategies to delay the foreclosure for 25 years. This was the longest known foreclosure in history. She knew her rights, what disclosures lenders are required to provide, and went along with a host of other info and tactics to use successfully against the lender who tried to foreclose on her for many years. So they called it the foreclosure from hell. So the 25-year foreclosure from hell. Banks now fear Patsy Campbell, who hasn't made a mortgage payment since 1985. An investment group finally foreclosed on her in 2010. As of 2022, I did a little research. I found out she was still alive at the age of 84. So Patsy Campbell was a retired insurance saleswoman. She'd been fighting 25-year mortgage foreclosure case on a Florida home. She's been living in the house, a 2-story on a half-acre in a tidy middle-class neighborhood in Central Florida since 1978. The last time she made a mortgage payment was October 1985. Her foreclosure case lasted 6 lenders, and it's seen 7 grandchildren born. Miss Campbell has been able to keep her house protected by a 105-pound pit bull named Dodger and a locked rusty gate advising visitors to be aware of the dog. She challenged her foreclosure on the grounds that her mortgage was improperly transferred between banks and federal agencies, that lawyers for the bank had waited too long to prosecute the case because there was a statute of limitations, I guess, and that a Florida law shields her from all creditors, and for dozens of other reasons. So she basically kept them tied up in court. She has met every attempt by a lender to repossess her home with multiple appeals and counteractions, burying them in the plaintiffs facing her under piles of paperwork. According to the Wall Street Journal, attorney Robert Summers, who represents the current owner of the mortgage, called it the foreclosure case, every lender's nightmare. So I got it from these several news sources here. I was able to put this story back together, but that's an entertaining one for sure. So if you know your rights and you know the laws and how they need to be, you could keep postponing court cases until you can't postpone it no more. And then you go there and then you bring up another reason that the lender's going to need to produce evidence for that they probably don't have on them. And then when they reschedule, then you keep postponing it till they won't let you do it again. And then you bring up another reason, and that's basically what she was doing to postpone it. That's amazing. 25 years. How about this nightmare case? A woman is foreclosed by her HOA, which then buys her condo at auction for $3.25 and then sells it for $1 to the attorney who did the foreclosure and split the profits. I'm going to show you this video because New Jersey has very similar laws. I believe I got to stream it through this website here. Let me see.
Okay, here's me calling.
When Patricia Quigley calls her HOA's property management company, she gets this message.
The number you dialed is not a working number.
But call from any other phone number.
Thank you for calling Access Management Group.
You're blocked.
9 a.m.
In 2010, Quigley, upset with her HOA's billing process, decided to take a stand and refused to pay her dues, about $700 that year. But that only led to letters from Lozeka and Johansson, the law firm hired to collect on the debt. And that debt had grown.
Walked in, paid him the $2,700, and when I walked out, I said, "This is all I owe, right?" Yes.
But it wasn't all you owed.
No.
Shortly after, she received another bill for $3,000. She called and sent letters trying to figure out why. But all Quigley says she got in return were cryptic statements, dates with amounts that didn't make any sense to her.
Then here comes the next set of letters. And now it's up to $6,400.
Turns out there were post-judgment legal fees and 18% back interest. So even after she'd paid more than $9,000, she was still somehow behind on her dues. But in 2018, she received the most shocking letter of all, an eviction notice.
You lose your home. That's hard.
But sadness turned to anger when she realized the HOA had purchased her home through foreclosure for $3.24 a year before she was evicted. So you had been living in your house for a year, but you didn't legally own your house.
No.
Quigley says not only did the HOA accept her dues payment on a house she apparently did not own, but allowed her to make another $4,600 in home loan payments before getting kicked out. She paid a debt she did not owe.
Yes, that's for sure. And they don't have to give it back.
Attorney George Nowak has helped craft Georgia's HOA laws since the 1980s. He says Quigley's story is tragic, but it is a tragedy of her own making.
It doesn't happen
In a vacuum.
in a back room in blue smoke and mirrors.
Nowak says the HOA can't win a judgment until the homeowner owes at least $2,000. The court must perform a title search, have the foreclosure posted in the paper for a month, and the homeowner served.
They brought this on because they ignored all of the requests to pay. They didn't show up at the trial most times.
You want some more?
Quigley admits she never did go to court, not understanding the process or the stakes involved. But Phoenicia Law, a homeowner in Douglas County, did try to fight the HOA's claims against her.
When they garnished my bank account,
I was unemployed.
Law owns a home in the Rosewood Community Association. She received a payment plan to catch up on her dues, but there were a few added fees she didn't understand.
I didn't know how it was stacking up. You
just knew it was a lot.
I knew it was a lot.
She disputed the bill in court, appealing to the judge for help.
These exhibits I sent to the court.
But court records say Law's dispute arrived one day too late, so the judge couldn't consider issues like this check, an HOA payment mailed in vain.
Clearly, returned to sender 7 times.
The kicker, after she lost the case, she was told to mail her settlement payment to that same address. And this time, the check didn't come back.
While it's portrayed as cold and you're taking advantage of the homeowner, it's the exact opposite. People who don't pay their assessments are having everybody else in the community subsidize them.
Georgia law fiercely protects an HOA's right to collect what is owed, but neither of these women deny their debt. What they do have a problem with is the inability to mediate and ask questions when a disagreement arises.
A lot of times, people can't afford to fight. They just have to walk away.
According to the Community Association Institute, 6 states have some type of ombudsman to help educate and facilitate these discussions. And several states require mediation before a lawsuit is filed. Georgia isn't one of them. After Quigley was evicted, the Reveal learned her HOA sold the house to an employee at the law firm involved in her foreclosure.
That really bothers me because how could that not be illegal?
According to public documents, Legacy Investment Properties, a company that didn't legally exist at the time, bought the house for $1 and a portion of the profits. The woman behind the LLC then reactivated her real estate license and sold the home to a new family.
I've never heard a story like that before.
Well, the HOA and law firm recouped their money, and the LLC likely made some.
This cat's tougher than...
Quigley ended up homeless, losing tens of thousands of dollars in equity.
The courts have said there is no legitimate reason for not paying. If you believe the association has done you wrong, then sue the association.
Pay it.
And sue the association.
Messed up, huh? But I showed you that because New Jersey's laws are very similar. How about this one? Have you ever heard of somebody foreclosing on a bank?
Yeah. In Bank of America, I hear some few stories of Bank of America too.
There's one at Bank of America, and in another chapter, I'm going to show you one where it was Wells Fargo.
As a foreclosure defense attorney, this is sweet justice.
Only on Wink tonight, the tables are turned. Instead of Bank of America foreclosing on a home, a homeowner has deputies foreclose on the bank.
Bank of America filed foreclosure papers on a homeowner who didn't owe a dime. They paid for their house with cash.
Renee Stoll live at the Bank of America branch on Davis Boulevard in Naples with this story you'll see only on Wink tonight.
This is about a family who fought back and won. Their foreclosure nightmare started when they bought a house in the Golden Gate Estates owned by Bank of America. Like you said, they paid cash, so they never had a mortgage. Well, Bank of America fouled it up somewhere along the lines and actually tried to foreclose on the family. And what happened today, you're just going to have to see to believe. Movers, a truck, and an armed deputy, all while a nervous homeowner stands by and waits. This is normally what you'd see when a person's being foreclosed on and their property seized by a bank. But today, it's the other way around.
They've ignored our calls, ignored our letters. Legally, this is the next step to get my clients compensated.
A Collier County judge said Bank of America had to pay Maureen Nairges and her husband's legal fees after the bank tried to foreclose on their Golden Gate Estates property, but they paid cash. The courts agreed they never had a mortgage to begin with. After more than 5 months, the bank still hadn't paid up. So the homeowner's attorney did just what the bank would do to get their money, seize their assets.
I instructed the deputy to go in and take desks, computers, copiers, filing cabinets, including cash in the drawers.
Outside the bank, several deputies stood by with movers ready to start hauling out the bank's office supplies and furniture. Inside, the homeowner's attorney was locked out of the bank manager's office by deputies while the bank manager tried to figure out what to do.
He was visibly shaken. Having two sheriff's deputies sitting across your desk and a lawyer standing up behind them, demanding whatever assets are in the bank, it can be intimidating. But so is having your home foreclosed on when it wasn't right.
After about an hour, the bank finally cut a check.
As a foreclosure defense attorney, this is sweet justice, because this is a symptom of a larger problem.
Now, the homeowner's attorney says that he sees mistakes all the time in foreclosure court where banks do not do their due diligence, and it winds up becoming a very lengthy process for the homeowners. He says he can only think of one other time where an attorney, the deputies, and a U-Haul came to a bank before ready to seize property. That was in Tampa. As far as Bank of America, they issued a statement saying that they apologize for the wait on the payment. They issued a notice to pay from the attorney that was working on the case on their side, but they didn't know the attorney went out of business. We'll be reporting live here in Naples. Renee Stoll, Wink News now.
And so that concludes chapter 13 here. Some interesting stories there, huh? Let's do the key terms to review. Chapter 13. There's only one key term to review here. It's a longer one though. So let's get started. Lender. What's another word for lender? Who's the lender also known as?
The mortgagor.
Is the borrower. So therefore the lender is.
Oh, the mortgagee, sorry.
There you go. So 11 is A, as in apple. Pledging of property as security without surrendering possession of that property. A mortgage is an example of this. When you're pledging your property as security for debt, but you're not giving up that property. You're living in it. What do we call that? Sounds like a rich word.
Hypothecation.
Hypothecation is correct. 9 is B. A written pledge of real estate as security for a loan.
Mortgage.
The written pledge of security for 10 is C. 10 is C.
Okay.
Property acquired, so mortgage is correct. Property acquired by lender. Property acquired by the lender.
Foreclosure.
What was that?
Foreclosure.
What do we call property? Property acquired by lenders. It's a bank-owned property. They own it free, no lien on it.
REO property?
REO, real estate owned by the bank. 15 is D. Clause ensuring that after repayment, the lender has no claim on the property. Stop that loan. You
Alienation clause?
when you paid off that loan, you've defeated it.
Defeasance.
Defeasance. That would be correct. That is 5 is E as in Edward. Borrower's statement of how much remains on the mortgage debt. What do we call that? Borrower's statement of how much remains on the mortgage debt, the interest rate, number of payments, etc. All the details of the loan being verified on this document.
The note?
Well, estoppel certificate. An estoppel certificate. 7 is court order that pay money lost by the lender after foreclosure. A court order that borrower pay money lost by the lender after foreclosure.
Mm,
Usury? No?
Deficiency judgment. A deficiency judgment. 6 is G. Another word for borrower. Who's the borrower?
mortgagor.
Mortgagor. 12 is H. A clause stating that if the property is sold, the debt needs to be immediately payable. What is that clause in the note that says if the property is sold, the debt needs to be payable? It's also known as the due on sale clause in the note.
Alienation clause.
Yes, it's the alienation clause. 2 is I. Correct. Proceeding to auction foreclosed real estate. What do we call that proceeding to auction foreclosed real estate?
Acceleration clause.
A proceeding to auction foreclosed real estate is also known as
Sheriff sale?
a sheriff's sale. 18 is J. Charging a higher interest than is allowed by law.
Usury.
Usury. 20 is K. Failure to live up to any part of a mortgage agreement.
Default?
Nation agreement.
Yes. 4 is L. Lender's statement that the debt has been repaid in full. What do we call the lender's statement? The document the lender signs.
Sheriff's deed?
No?
Oh,
The-
satisfaction mortgage.
No, no.
No?
The document that the lender signs showing how much remains on the debt, what the interest rate is, stuff when they're selling a loan.
Satisfaction of mortgage. No.
Reduction certificate. The reduction certificate. You guys need to study that as the reduction. 13 is over. Arrangement by which mortgage gives up priority. Arrangement by which a mortgage holder gives up the priority, dropping back in lien repayment. It's a subordination agreement. You're becoming subordinate to another loan. Sub means underneath. You know, like submarine, subordination agreement. It drops back in lien priority. You're a you work for someone else. You're working for someone in the ranking. So 15 is P, subordination agreement. To seize and sell property pledged for a debt. To seize and sell property pledged for debt.
Foreclosure.
Foreclosure. 8 is Q. Clause stating that in case of default, the whole debt is immediately payable.
Acceleration clause.
It accelerates the terms of repayment with the acceleration clause. One is a document given to the purchaser of foreclosed property. A document given to the purchaser of foreclosed property.
Notes? No.
Satisfaction of mortgage?
Okay, wait. Who purchases property that's been foreclosed? Where are you purchasing a property that's been foreclosed? After foreclosure, where does the property go up for sale?
Sheriff's sale. So a sheriff's deed?
Sheriff's deed. They're the 18. You gotta think through the process, asking questions about the question to get to that answer. Personal promise to repay a loan similar to a bond. What do you call that? Personal promise to pay. You guys should know this off the top of your head. What is a promise to pay?
Mortgage was used, right?
Mortgage. Okay, third, personal promise to repay a loan similar to a bond. The mortgage is the promise, but actually this is personal promise to repay a loan similar to a bond. If it's the same thing as a bond. That could have been worded a little differently. I shouldn't have used the word bond for that. There's two parts of a mortgage. The mortgage itself, which is the promise to pay, and
the note.
The note.
The note, which is the financing instrument that lays out all the terms, and that's your personal guarantee to repay the money borrowed. Even in the event of foreclosure, that's not enough to repay. So 13 is T, the note. There you go.
So,
which one is O and N?
Sorry?
I'm only missing O and N.
Okay, so lender's statement of how much remains on the debt. What's the document that the lender signs? It's the reduction certificate when they sell those loans. They're confirming how much is owed on the debt to the person selling the investor they're selling the loan to. That's the reduction certificate. 14 is O. And what was the other one?
And N.
And
which is the bond?
Repay money similar to a note.
The bond?
3 is N.
Oh, okay, 3 is N. Okay.
And then the last one was similar to a bond, the note. All right. So that concludes chapter 3, the first of 3 chapters of mortgages.